For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Chad Bushnell. How's it going today, Chad?
Hey, it's going great. How about you?
Doing pretty good. It's that weird part of the Texas weather where it's really warm during the day, but at night it becomes cold. So it's like, okay, you turn the air conditioning on during the day, but once that sun goes down, you better crank that thing off or you're going to freeze to death at night. So it's an interesting part of the year. So, but first off, I want to thank you so much for jumping on here to chat a little bit. I'm really excited to sit down and chat with you and get to know more about you and what you got going on. I know you've got a busy April coming up. You just finished recording your next album, and then you got a whole bunch of shows lined up. So I'm really excited to sit down and chat about that a little bit. But before we get into all that and all the fun stuff you got coming up, let's take this opportunity to introduce you to, or for you to introduce yourself to all the new listeners, people that might be meeting you for the first time. What's kind of your background story?
Yeah, so, I grew up basically in a rodeo family, and grew up doing rodeo. I competed as a team roper and a steer wrestler, and, both my parents competed in rodeo and traveled. And so that was a lot of my upbringing. And my dad, was a singer, he sang, and my uncle, my aunt. And so I actually had some musical family. And so growing up, I just, always sang with them. And when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I was singing national anthem at some rodeos. That's kind of where I got started and just kept kind of building from there. And, I started entering talent shows. I was about 12, 13 and, just kept basically building and kind of getting in it that way.
Gotcha. Was there a specific moment when you were younger that you were kind of like, okay, this is something that I need to turn into a career, or I want to turn into a career?
Yeah, pretty much my whole life I've known ever since. Man, I'm trying to think of that moment, but, I think all my family knew I was about 3 or 4 years old, and they gave me a little toy guitar at a family reunion. And I think everybody knew that's probably what I was going to end up doing, and, it's great. I love it. So. Cool.
And then when you were so you started off playing guitar and you took guitar lessons. At what point did you start singing, or was that always part of it as well?
It's kind of always part of it. I probably started singing before I started playing. I remember, I think I was about 4 years old when I got my first guitar lesson at a cowboy church here in California. And so my dad, he tried to show me stuff, but there was a guy that gave lessons, and I think he gave me my first official lesson.
Gotcha. And at that point, you're just doing like covers and scales and like what would be considered standards, I guess?
Kind of in the church, my great grandma, she played in church. And so I grew up playing with her a lot, and my dad, and, a couple different churches, and kind of got going that way.
Gotcha. And so then growing up in the church, you, that's where you kind of really honed your musical skills. Outside of that, who were you listening to for influences? Who were some of the musicians you were listening to?
Man, I grew up listening to a lot of Merle Haggard and Dwight Yoakam and Waylon Jennings and all that stuff. And I think one of the first songs I ever learned was I Saw the Light by Hank Williams. That was probably my first official song I learned. And so I did, a lot of that, and a lot of the gospel songs too. I'd spent a lot of time with those at a young age.
Gotcha. And then at what point did you start writing your own music? Was that a bit later on, or were you still pretty young when you started writing your own music?
Yeah, it's probably a little later on. I mean, probably 13, 14, which I guess is still young. But probably when I was in high school is when I started kind of really seriously trying to write songs. And, I remember one of my first big gigs, because I'd only really played coffee shops, family get-togethers and stuff. And I was about 15. My ag teacher said, "Hey, you want to perform at the FFA state convention in California?" And it's like a talent show thing. And I kind of didn't know until about the week of, there's 6,000 people at that thing. and I had to play in front of 6,000 people, 15 years old. Yeah, I was nervous, and that was probably my first big thing I got to do.
And was it that show that you played? Did you play? Was it like one song or several songs, or?
It was I think it was one song.
Okay.
And
you remember what song you played?
Yeah, it was "Just Call Me Lonesome" by Radney Foster.
Okay.
One of my favorite songs. And I met my guitar teacher actually when I was about 12, 13, was Roy Dyer back here, and he gave me my first serious lessons about 13, and he showed me that song. You know, I didn't know what it was, and he said, "Hey, you want to learn this song? It'd be kind of, it's kind of a beginner, the chords thing." And I really liked it, started singing it, and so that's kind of became one of my all-time favorite songs, and so I sang that. It was crazy.
Awesome. So after that kind of first big experience in front of the stage, what did you start recording at that point, or where did you kind of go after that?
Well, I started entering more talent shows, and I won one when I was about 16. And this guy in town introduced me to a guy in Nashville, and he was nice and talked to me. Nothing really came of it, but it was a good connection that I still have. And finally, I think I was about 17, I sang the national anthem at a PBR, and it was a smaller one. Yeah. And the promoters, they heard me, said, "Hey, you want to open up for James Otto next year at the fair?" And I was about 18, and that was my first big opening slot. So, yeah.
Cool. And so kind of fast forwarding a little bit, you kind of went through that whole transition or that transformation of doing like smaller shows into bigger shows, and then you got into the PBR and started doing even bigger shows from there. At what point I guess the next logical question is, are you a full-time musician at this point, or are you still working a job at some?
Yeah, I'm about half and half. I still work as a farrier a little bit when I'm home. Mm-hmm. So I shoe horses a little bit, and I think it goes along good with kind of the cowboy thing. And it's great. My dad's a farrier, and I had the opportunity to learn at a young age. I went to college, and when I was done, I decided, shoeing horses, and I'm down to a few days a week, and I go back and forth to Texas and Nashville. But when I'm home, I still have some clients I shoot for.
Cool. So you have that, not safety net, but just something else to kind of break away from music if you need to for a little bit.
It is. It's good because, sometimes you play too many shows and it starts, sometimes you can overdo it, and so shoeing is good. It kind of keeps me grounded and it's great and keeps me in shape. Shoeing's a physical,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Gotcha. That's cool.
Great.
And so you released your debut album in 2017. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that was Tennessee. What was kind of the thought process going into that album specifically? Was it, did you start off with the idea of releasing an album, or were you just writing music and it ended up, oh, hey, I got enough for an album?
Well, for that one in particular, that was my first Nashville album, and I've did a few local, and I got to work with the guy. I mean, this was awesome. I got to do my first two albums locally in Reading with Bruce Turgan, who's used to play for Foreigner. And wow. I learned so much from him. It was great, great experience. Learned a lot from him, but I wanted, just being a really traditional country guy, my next step was to do a full album in Tennessee and Nashville. And so that was my goal. I wrote as many as I could. I took my best songs and I got a couple covers, and just sort of went for it. Yeah.
Gotcha. And you had been, prior to that, you had been releasing singles. Singles, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Bruce, he taught me a lot because I went in really not just basically knowing how to play and sing. And he taught me how to play with the metronome. I played guitar on most of my albums when I first started. Mm-hmm. And more recently, I've kind of let the studio guys, I play a little bit on it, but, those guys play pretty awesome. So I kind of let the pros do it,
Yeah. When you get out to Nashville, man, you got some pros out there that just know way more than they should. Like it is.
I collaborate with them, I kind of give them some ideas, but a little bit, and then I kind of let them.
Yeah, for sure. That's the amazing thing about Nashville in general, is just the talent there is unmatched anywhere. So that's really cool. So Tennessee was your debut album, and then you were able to get another album out before the pandemic hit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, it's been so long since the pandemic started. When did the pandemic? Yeah, but so you got another album out. The album that you just got done recording, which I kind of teased a little bit ago when we first started this thing, had you started working on that before the pandemic hit, or was this something that you had been just starting to work on during the pandemic?
Well, it kind of went a different direction. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I wanted to do either my next full album in Nashville or Texas and kind of, go to the next level with it. And I'd had a song that was sitting there. I recorded back in probably 2018, and it was a cool song. I never released it. I sort of held on to it, and it was written by a guy that was helping produce me. And one of the practices, my band member said, "Man, dude, what's that Whiskey Broken Heart song?" He's like, "You really should be playing that." And I'm like, "Really?" And I'm like, "I know it is a good song." And so I said, "Well," so let's do it. And so I went back to Nashville. I redid it because it'd been a couple years since I sang it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Well, I think I'm ready to release another album."
Mm-hmm.
So I went. I kind of had the idea of doing it in Nashville, but I really like Aaron Watson and Casey Donahue. Those are some of my favorite music. So I'd opened for Aaron Watson, and I contacted him. I said, "Hey man, I said, I've opened for you quite a bit." I said, "Where do you record? I really like your sound." And
Mm-hmm.
so he turned me on to the Rosewood Studios in Tyler, Texas, and that's where I've done a lot of my recording.
Nice.
For this album, I kind of decided to go Texas country with this. Yeah.
Awesome. And you literally just got out of the studio for it, right? Within the last couple.
Yeah, I got back Saturday night. Yeah.
Right. Because I saw you posted on Facebook, and I was like, I don't know if he intended on it being this perfect or if it was just a happy coincidence, but I saw you posted on Facebook, and I was like, all right, sweet, something amazing to talk about. So, So this was your first full length album that you recorded in Texas, or first project period?
Yeah. I just, I don't know. It just kind of hit me one day. I was listening to Aaron's stuff, and I said, "Man, I really like this." And I kind of like the whole Texas thing. I like what's going on. I feel for my style, it's kind of a better fit with Nashville going a little bit more pop country. I kind of like what those guys are doing. And so I just messaged Aaron one day, and he was all about it. And so I've done some of it at Rosewood, and then I ended up doing the rest of it at Edgewater Studios in Houston.
Okay, cool. So 100% Texas, which is really cool because it's like Texas has got its own scene here. It's really bizarre. Like, if you just go to any place that has a red dirt Texas country artist, they're like the biggest name in Texas. But you go outside of Texas, and very few. The further outside of Texas you go, the fewer people know about it. Which it's really interesting and kind of cool that they have their own self-sustaining music scene down here, where you could like literally just continually tour around Texas and probably be more than comfortable in your life.
Oh yeah.
So.
No, it seems like a great deal. Right now I get to, these last 2 or 3 years, I've got to tour pretty much, California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, and Colorado, and kind of just been doing the Western states. But Texas, I really want to start doing some California, Arizona, Texas runs. That's my next goal. So.
Cool. If you ever need a place in New Mexico, because people seem to not think New Mexico is a good place to stop. They, Roswell, New Mexico has got a really cool, like they bring in over a lot of the red Texas artists, the red dirt country artists. So it's really cool. Yeah. So if you're just looking for a place, like it's been a while since I've been involved in the music scene there. So I don't know like what kind of draw they get, but I know when I was there about 4 or 5 years ago, they were getting pretty good draws for some good names. So yeah, but
I love New Mexico too, especially Gallup. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Gallup is awesome. Gallup's awesome. So kind of leaning into the album a little bit more, how did you go into the creative process for this album? Did you specifically write towards an album, or were you just kind of writing in general and then like the idea for the album came?
Kind of both. I was really kind of my goal. It's kind of funny. I was trying to blend the kind of the 90s country sound with the Texas country things. Basically what I've tried to do with this album is a lot of my songs, they're sort of geared towards the 90s country thing,
Mhm.
And so but I'm like, well, the Texas country thing has its own sound. So it's like Texas country with a little bit of 90s country influence is basically what I was going for. So I picked songs, some of them that I have written, and actually some of that I recently written. I just kind of mixed them. So I got some of my best songs. I took a couple from some guys in Nashville that I got to know, and so yeah, basically just went for it that way.
Gotcha. And then as far as your release strategy, are you planning on doing like singles and all that, or are you going to just release the album outright?
I'd like to do one more single. I'm going back and forth. There's two songs. One's kind of more little on the Nashville side that I'm thinking about releasing. But then when I was in there with Edgewater, there's one song that they really liked that they kind of geared really heavy towards the Texas country thing, and they said that might be your next single. So I'm gonna see how when the other one's done, I'm gonna compare them and see which one works the best for me. But
Gotcha. So was Thank God the first single?
so yeah, actually, Out of Style was the first single for the album. Thank God is going to be going on my inspirational country album probably next year. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm thinking I'm missing a couple of songs off your Spotify list because I was trying to piece it all together, but I gotcha.
Thank God I've been doing good, so I've been excited for that. But yeah, that's going to go on my Christian country album.
Gotcha. And then what would you say was the lead single for the upcoming album?
Probably Out of Style, one that's been out for a couple months, and yeah, it's sitting about kind of like 75, 80 on the Texas charts right now, and trying to get down there and do some touring, hopefully to move it up on the charts a little bit, and so
yeah. Gotcha. Why'd you choose that song specifically?
Well, that was my first time I decided to go Texas country a little bit. I was sitting there and I was supposed to go out and shoe horses actually one day, and I decided it was raining, and I said, well. I decided to go out, and I was like, I'm gonna take a rain check today. And so I stayed home. I said, well, I'm gonna write a song. And so I'm like, I'm gonna write something Texas country. I just opened for Aaron Watson actually, and I said, well, so that's what I came up with. I said I have a whole day, and I'm gonna write a Texas country song. So I said, well, so yeah, that's how I came up with that.
Cool. And then is there a music video out for it or anything, or is it just the single right now?
It's just sitting there right now. It's just mainly pushing to the charts and trying to get up on Spotify, and gotcha. That's my goal with it right now. I'm gonna do definitely a music video for one of them. So.
Gotcha. And then just kind of moving forward from there, do you have a release date yet for the album, or just because you got just done recording it, it's still too soon?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Have you decided on a release date yet for the album yet, or no?
Oh, I probably it's June, July, somewhere in there. I still got some more stuff to do. They have to kind of master and finish, recording and stuff. But yeah, so June, July, and then I'm really hitting it hard with touring through there. That's when we're really going out of the area, and I'm gonna try to be in Texas this fall. And
got it.
Yeah.
Cool. And you've got some shows coming up here in April. Like April's a really busy month for you. What kind of shows are you playing in April?
Man, I got 10 shows in April, so it's going to be really busy. But I'm going to be I'm opening for Mitchell Tenpenny this Friday, and then I'm going to go open for Lainey Wilson end of April, and then basically just in between that, a lot of kind of some private events, some casinos, and just really I'm going to be going to Nashville and playing Whiskey Jam, so it's going to be a real busy month. Yeah.
Awesome. That's got to be exciting, especially with the pandemic. I'm not sure how much it slowed you down as far as playing shows and whatnot, but just getting out and playing shows, that's got to be pretty exciting. So
it's great. Yeah, no, I'm excited. So
awesome. Well, so kind of outside of music, when you're not shoeing horses or playing music, what do you do in your spare time? What are some of your hobbies?
Man, just what, I love to travel sometimes. My wife and I, we go places, and I like to rope with my sister. She's in the rodeo business, so I go out and rope with her, and just kind of do whatever family stuff, really. Anything with my family when I'm not doing that. So
awesome. I just recently got introduced firsthand to like team roping and stuff like that as far as rodeo. That's where I work. I work for a TV station, and I was doing a story about a kid that survived like a terminal illness, and his big thing was team roping. And so we went out to his family's ranch and got a whole bunch of shots of him and his partner doing team roping stuff. So that was really fun and cool. So
Okay.
is that kind of what you were doing, or is team roping something completely different than what?
No, that's exactly what I try. My sister, she's a pro.
Yeah.
You know, she works for Helimatic, and she's basically, you know, she does a cool thing. She's the brand ambassador for Helimatic, and she travels and works for them and basically gets paid to rope. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. That's cool. It's really interesting. Like once you understand what's going on and what they're trying to accomplish, it's really cool and exciting. So
yeah, it's great.
Cool. But I don't want to keep you too much longer here. Outside of the album and the tour, what's the rest of not tour shows? What's the rest of 2022 looking like for you?
Basically just trying to get this new album out, you know, that's my main focus this year, and really trying to get, you know, all my numbers up and just keep building my fan base, and just, you know, a lot of traveling. You know, we're going to be just really going for it, and more shows in Texas, going back to Nashville, and it's just really going for it.
Cool. Have you started booking the Texas tour yet, or the shows in Texas, or no, not really?
We're working on it. I kind of missed the summer. You know, I have so many booked here right now, and you know, we're going to be probably about 6 different states so far. And so I think probably fall, winter for Texas.
Yeah. Luckily in Texas, the fall and the springtime are probably the times you really want to be here. So
yeah, no, it'll be good. So I'm excited.
Because I'm not looking forward to this summer. Like it has been such a dry year already. And this summer is just going to be brutal. I can feel it already. So, but yeah, so that's awesome. I want to thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me for a little bit. I really appreciate you giving us your time. For anybody that wants to check out your new album or any of your upcoming shows, where's the best place for them to do that?
And they can go to Spotify or iTunes, any online music store. They can go to chadbushnell.com and check it all out. They can go follow me at Chad Bushnell Music on Instagram and Facebook, and what else is there? TikTok. There we go. So yeah, anything like that, it's all out there. And so yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, once again, thank you. Before we wrap this thing up, what's a piece of advice you have for the young musicians out there?
Man, just you know, if you really want to do it, just, you know, start doing things like I did, you know, entering talent shows, play at coffee shops. And I've played probably some of the smallest shows and, you know, sides of places, and basically just doing it that way. National anthem is a great way, you know, just getting involved in anything like that. The talent shows, national anthems. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for hanging out with us. It's been an absolute blast chatting with you. Hopefully we could have you back on later in the year as the full album and the next album kind of come into a clearer release dates and whatnot. But would love to have you back on. Once again, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you all later.